Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got 3 replays in the Soviet Tier 10 Tech Tree double-barreled heavy tank, mouthful, the ST2. This is the pinnacle of the double-barreled line. This is the tank that you're all grinding towards as we speak. And what's it like? Well, the ST2 is genuinely a really solid heavy tank. It does what the ST1 does at Tier 9, but just that little bit better at Tier 10. And then add into the fact that you have that fantastic double barrel as well. And you've got memes galore, because honestly, I love double tapping things with this double barrel in this, well, with this tank. Because the 440 alpha you have, that 880 alpha as a double burst, is so powerful. And in a lot of situations where you just need to peek fire and then you're going to pull back and know you're safe to reload as long as you want, it is filthily strong to use. Adding to that, you've got really good turret armor, although the cupola on top, it's a little sticky outy cupola, essentially can be penned. It's on the right hand side of the turret, but for the most part the turret armor is really good. The upper hull armor as well is quite bouncy, although it struggles a little bit against some of the tier 10 premium rounds like the 340 heats and the really high pen TD shots as well, like that 114 SP2 has. It can still bounce a lot more than the IS-32 can, the tier below. The one thing it loses, though, as you've just seen the 114 SP2 do that, the one thing it loses compared to the IS-32, obviously, so it gains a bit better armor, and it gains ever so slightly better gun handling, the better penetration, and 440 alpha. What it loses is that little bit of mobility that the IS-32 has, because this tank goes at 40 kilometers an hour top speed, right? But the IS-32 goes at 38 kilometers an hour. So you're going, well, the IS-32 goes slower than the ST2 on paper, because the ST2 actually doesn't really ever hit that 40 kilometer an hour top speed. It just doesn't. Even with a powertrain, it doesn't really hit that 40 kilometer an hour top speed unless you're going downhill, which is a little bit sad. But it is what it is, and you've gained armor for that, essentially. So it is trade-offs. So, yeah, the SC2 is that little bit slower, which is a little bit sad. I haven't played them a decent amount. Now, I still feel like I enjoyed the SC2 a little bit more. No, sorry, the ST2, the IS-22. So there's lots of 2s going off here. The IS-3, oh my lord, we're going for it. Right, let's start again. The IS-32, I enjoyed the IS-32 more than the ST2, but that's not any detriment to the ST2 whatsoever, because it's still a solid tank and it's a very, very enjoyable tank to play. This, honestly, this double barrel 122 that this tank gets is so much fun to use. It is really, really good. You just feel like you're constantly in the fight. You never feel like you're outgunned, and you can bounce a good amount of bounce a good amount of shots if you use your armor intelligently. It's a very, very nice tank. So, what do I run in terms of equipment and a commander? Well, I run Born Leader, Rapid Reload, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Steady Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Trap Mechanic, and Armor Angling. So, I actually run Armor Angling. I run Armor Angling to reduce the amount of damage that comes in to this tank by 5%. And then I make the gun handling as good as possible with all the crew perks, because I don't run the gun stabilizer, because yet again the gun handling on this tank is absolutely fabulous and you really don't need the gun stabilizer. It's just a little bit overkill. You could run it naturally and it'll make this gun absolutely god tier, but do you need it? No. For me, I feel extremely comfortable with the gun without the gun stabilizer, so I changed it up to run other stuff. So in terms of equipment, I run vents, advanced armor, and optics. Advanced armor in conjunction with armor angling basically reduces the amount of damage I'm going to take by 10%. The vents will make everything about the tank better in general, and optics to get my view range as high as possible. Now, that first game was basically the more average stroll of a game you're going to have in the ST2. We finished with 4.3k damage, the third class, and 1138 base XP. It's basically a fairly average tier 10 game. But yeah, so I run the advanced armor in conjunction with the armor angling, because I'm reducing the amount of damage coming into my tank by 10%, or I'm reducing the RNG on the shells coming into my tank, essentially the ones that pen me. So that gives me more opportunity to have more hit points to play with, be able to trade a little bit more effectively, because if someone else has 440 alpha and they hit me, realistically, they've probably got, what, 400 alpha, 420 alpha, something like that instead, and they don't know that because they won't have a clue that I've got advanced armor and armor angling as well. And it gives you that little bit extra hit points to play with. It's that nice little bit of customizability. Because the gun is so good, you don't need the gun stabilizer. You could do what you will with it. I mean, if you didn't want to run advanced armor, you could quite easily run the powertrain to get yourself more horsepower, just to be able to get towards that 40 km/h top speed. And powertrain does help. It does get you that extra little oomph in the engine to get a little bit better mobility. But generally, I just feel like I didn't get enough out of it to warrant using it, and I wanted to do something else. So I just run the advanced armor instead. You could run the... I wouldn't ever recommend running the traction system, by the way, on this tank. And that is because you don't ever actually hit your top speed. So what's the point in making yourself 4 kilometers an hour faster if you don't hit your top speed? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could run the spall liner as well to reduce the effect of splash damage and HE and all that sort of stuff, you know, the explosion damage essentially, if you wanted to as well, you know, for all those AVREs and stuff you're going to face. It's completely down to you and how you want to set up the tank. So we're on this second replay. So the first replay was a very average game that you're generally going to feel in an ST2, where you sort of stroll about, get some damage here and there, manage to get a few double shots off, and then the game just ends, and it's a pretty quick game. These next two games are some damn nice games that I've had in the ST2 already. So this first game is on, or should I say the second game, is on Ruinberg, which is perfect because we're on a heavy tank, and we can really get stuck into the brawl here. We managed to double shot an Iron Arnie earlier on, by accident, because I wanted to double shot the AVRE. You always want to get rid of the AVRE. Always, always, always. And now we've managed to get a few shots into the machine, and we're brawling on this corner. We're just looking for some shots into this 705A's lower plate. We slap the shot in, and as you can see, the gun bloom. The gun bloom is basically non-existent. We're moving. We haven't got a gun stabilizer, so you're just seeing how good the gun handling is on this tank. This is why I say I don't really need the gun stabilizer, because the gun just handles well enough as it is. Yeah, like I say, you could make your mobility better with a powertrain. You could make your mobility. You could make everything else better about the tank with vents. You could reduce the amount of damage or reduce the RNG on someone penning you, essentially, and lower it with advanced armor and armor angling. And I'll say I like that meme. I don't get to use that sort of meme very often. So when the gun is so good, that's why I decided to do it. So we're up to 4.9k damage so far with 592 assistance, and there's 2 tanks left in front of us with a hell of a lot of tanks left for the enemy team. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and flank round and shut down this Tyrann, and then that way we can get rid of the artillery, because he was last seen coming this way too. The Tyrann is clearly not expecting us. We can see him just round the corner, and we shut him down. He wasn't poking out enough around that corner to spot us, and then using the fact that we have not... we have a fairly short intro clip, and we had the other gun loaded, we managed to shut down the artillery as well. But yeah, that Tyrann wasn't enough around the corner to actually be able to spot us, and that meant that we could shut him down without actually getting spotted ourselves. We're up to 5.2k damage, and there's 5 tanks left on the enemy team. And this is where I'm saying, you can see the mobility difference between this and the IS-32. Oh, by the way, we went for the double shot there on the Leopard, and unfortunately only one hit. But yeah, you can see the mobility difference. We're on flat. We're on the perfect ground, realistically, for a tank, but we're only going about 25 kilometers an hour. Realistically, if you run the powertrain, you tend to sit at about 30 to 31 to 32, somewhere around there, as opposed to 27, 28. That's the little bit of extra oomph in the engine you get. But yeah, like I say, I just felt like I'd rather help my brawling capacity as opposed to the little bit of mobility this tank gets. So we get a nice shot there into the lower plate of the E4. He gets shut down by the 279E, and now there's only 2 tanks left on the enemy team. I felt like I was just going to take the hit from the E4, whether he penned me or not, just because I needed to keep progressing, because there's not many of the enemy team left. I have the hit points, I may as well try and take the hit, try and get a shot in to shut him down, and then get some other shots in to shut these guys down. So we get a shot there into the Emil-2 to shut that guy down. Now there's the IS-7. We fire one shot. Unfortunately, it misses, but he clearly doesn't know I'm a double barrel. And we fire the second shot, and it bounces on his side. That's really sad that that bounced. That would have been our 4th kill of the game. But it is what it is. And we finished the game with a really nice total there on Ruinberg. We finished with the victory. 3 kills, 6.5k damage, 953 assistance. Ace tanker, the high caliber, with 1665 base XP. A really nice game there for the ST2. And that bounce on the side of the IS-7 was really sad, because this tank has 900... 900? No, imagine if it did have 900 pen. Jesus, that would smash through any armour. This tank has 258 pen on its standard AP rounds, which is enough to deal with everything you're going to face at tier 10, except for some of the super heavies. And if you do go against those super heavies, you can just load the 310 heat pen, which will then butcher their armour. Not quite as good as some of the other 330s and 340s, but you'll still be able to pen them with that 310 heat pen. And then, in terms of your shell velocity, you have 940 meters a second shell velocity on the AP, with 920 on the heat. So your heat is slightly worse, but is not that much different, realistically. But you do have to lead your shots with the ST2, because the shell velocity isn't the greatest, being below 1,000. I always feel like if the shell velocity is below 1,000, that is just not great. But once you're going above 1,000, it's like, yeah, this is getting better and nicer. And then obviously once you get to 1,200, that's fantastic. And once you get to 1,400 to 1,500, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, so we're in the not great zone with 940. So you really do have to make sure you lead your targets effectively with this tank. And make sure you give a lot of extra lead. Oh, that's a nice double barrel there on the move into that leopard one. That is always satisfying when that works like that. Beautiful scenes. So yeah, the accuracy during rotation on this tank is 0.36, with the accuracy during movement at 1.55. That is why the dispersions on this tank and why the accuracy of this tank feels so good. You can get the accuracy down to 0.32 with this setup with a 2.71 aim time. But it just doesn't feel like it's anywhere near derpy. It doesn't feel like you got 2.71 aim time at all. And it's because that movement and during rotation accuracy is so good. And that's why I don't run stabs again. I just reiterate that point, because I feel like the gun handling is so good, you can just set it up with a different way, right? So we've pushed very aggressively here on this third replay on Duck La Pass. And we managed to shut down the Leopard 1 there. Obviously, we got the double barrel earlier on the other Leopard 1. Now the 114 SP2 is pushed very aggressively. We have a good amount of team behind us and 2 medium tanks with us, which means that, well, this guy should hopefully blow up. I'm just watching the Gorilla behind me, because I'm like, what is going on there? He is running around, so we're going to turn our turret, turn our tracks, try and get our gun on target. We try and get the shot in, and unfortunately, it just does track damage only on the Gorilla. It's got no armor. Oh, game RNG. Why? Game, why? Just RNG. It does these things. Now the Gorilla is yet again coming up behind us. It's like, hello, friend. I have a double barrel. Good night, Mr. Gorilla 15. And we've up to 2.7k damage, 2.2k assistance. The IS-7 pushed out to try and get a shot at us. We are in a very aggressive position. This D4 position is a very, very good spot, unless the enemy team pushes you exceptionally aggressively. If they push you exceptionally aggressively and get into the dip behind you, it can be a bad time. But this position can also be very, very fruitful if you have a good amount of snipers. We get a nice double barrel there into the T100 LT. I could have shot one shot there instead of 2, but I decided to go for the double barrel because I felt like, number 1, I might be able to get the chance to reload, but number 2, I just wanted to get as many hit points off of that T100 LT as possible. And if I could take off 800 hit points in one go, we were going to do that, because he's been a little pest. We got a nice shot into the Death Star as well, which is good. We're up to 4k damage with 2.6k assistance. And we're just watching out for that Death Star, making sure he's not going to get a shot into us. And we're thinking about pushing and attacking this IS-7, because I really want to get rid of that guy. We look for a shot into the T100 LT. We try and get the double shot, but unfortunately he just does not turn whatsoever, like I thought he would, and we ended up missing both shots. We actually took a shot from a Tyrant as well for about 800 damage. I think it was about 800 damage anyway. And then the IS-7 actually came around and shot us as well. We take another hit there from the I-7, but we put a shot straight through his lower plate, and then we shut him down. And I want you to take note there of the 2 rolls that IS-7 had. He hit me for about 460 on his first shot that he penned me with. And then on his second shot, it was 367 he actually hit me for again. That's the power of armor angling and advanced armor together. It reduces those rolls really effectively. And, you know, he's got 490 average. So he hit me for 460, which sure is 30 less than his 490. But then the 367, that's quite the roll. And that's where that can really help you. Obviously, it can save you a lot of hit points for brawling with. So right here, we're going to try and reverse side scrape on this 268 version 5. Unfortunately, he does penners, and that's because this thing really doesn't do reverse side scraping that well because of the stepped back end that it has, which makes it very awkward. You have to really be careful what you're doing with that. And unfortunately, he penned us, but because we've got armor angling and that meant he ended up not having the actual damage roll to kill us, and we are still alive. Now we're just using this little ridge in front of us to keep ourselves a bit hulled down against this Valor, and thankfully he is not shooting at me. He's, well, distracted by the rest of my whole team coming in to get him, and we do get another shot into his side, which means the last shot he's going to take, and he gets shut down. And we finish the game with a really, really nice total yet again for the ST2. Finished with the epic victory, 4 kills, 6.1k damage, 2.6k assistance, the ace tank of the high caliber, the 1691 base XP, a really nice game for the ST2, which is a really fun tank at the top of this double barrel branch. And that, to be honest, the whole branch has been really good. It's been a solid grind, and the only problem is how much XP it takes to grind through it. But apart from that, it's been a really fun grind. But the mechanic is fun, and the tanks themselves are really solid fun. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
A great success!